Russell, it's been a privilege, I have to say, to read the wonderful tributes to Prince Philip following his death. I get the sense that there are particularly younger Britons and many Australians who are now only coming to understand what an extraordinary life he led. Do you think he was a misunderstood figure?
Well, that's a good way of putting it, actually. There's certainly been a cross-generational outpouring of emotion, and certainly when the Countess of Wessex, Prince Edward's wife, was speaking so emotionally yesterday, she said that she had been obviously very, very fond of him, known him for very many years, but even she had been rediscovering things about his remarkable life. And certainly there are people speaking not only from the country, the Commonwealth, but all over the world who are sharing in their real fond memories of the Duke of Edinburgh. And certainly people I've spoken to, whether they were palace staffers who worked at the for the royal family for many decades, or they were people who just had a fleeting moment meeting with him, they all spoke universally friendly of him, and he will be sorely missed by many, many people, that's for sure.
I want to ask you about Prince Philip's childhood. I mean, he was, as I read in one of the reports, born more royal than the Queen in many respects, given both his father and mother were prince and princess. But he came from a family with a lot of instability and tumult, a difficult, torrid upbringing, I have to say, in many respects. But he overcame those early years, and perhaps it was his time in the Navy or his just disciplined self. But it helped shape him, didn't it, into the no-nonsense sort of man he was?
Most certainly. He was like an onion, someone was describing me the other day. One of his former friends was saying that, he had so many layers to him. Not only his upbringing, which was quite fraught at the beginning, and certainly he was very, very marked by his mother, who had to be committed to an asylum for mental illness, and he was very scarred by that, really. But then his distinguished career in the forces that he had to give up quite early because of the Queen taking the throne, and that certainly affected him again, but shaped him into the man that he was to become. And certainly it was duty before everything, and that is something that he would remind the younger members of the family throughout his long and distinguished career. And then you think about what has happened in recent times with the shape-shifting of the younger members of the monarchy, certainly Harry and Meghan, their decision to leave, and what he certainly didn't agree with. But he would say that it's their life, they can get on with it. So a fair man, a frank man, and certainly one that was revered across all sections of society.
I want to pick up the point you made there about the frankness of him. As I was growing up in sort of the 70s and 80s, that was positioned as a gaffe-prone, and he was high and mighty and all of these things. I now read what a modest and austere life he's led, even in around the trappings of the royal family in Britain, obviously. He was the great moderniser, and I think that gaffe-prone nature that was once retailed to us was actually a directness and a frankness that helped bring this antiquated institution into the modern age. I mean, he was one who pushed very hard for the televising of the Queen's coronation and bringing, I guess, the family sense of the royal family out there in the open. He was a modern man.
Oh, most certainly. He walked into the institution and couldn't believe how stuffy it was. And he was a no-nonsense type of individual, a straight talker. He really got to grips with his own personality when he was in the Navy, and that sort of camaraderie of playing as one of a team, being together as a unit. He actually fortified that as a member of the monarchy. Now, his gaffes, I mean, some of them were absolutely close to the bone. They wouldn't survive in a modern world. But it was his way of trying to break the ice, certainly. And he didn't want to deflect from the Queen or his duty to support her. And it was always trying to make people in the atmosphere just break the ice, really. In terms of him as an individual, he definitely was a moderniser. He was the head of the family. The Queen was the head of the monarchy, of course, but he was the one who would take charge of family affairs, and he wanted to drag it into the modern age. And that's certainly what he would advise the younger members that the family has to evolve in order to survive. And it'll be very, very interesting to see his influence, not only on Charles, but also on William and the younger members of the family, to see if they do heed those lessons and take them forward, because the monarchy will need to do that in order to survive in the modern world.
He was a real man's man, and there was never a sense at all in the 99 years of his life that he was stepping into a place he shouldn't have gone in relation to the monarchy in terms of the crown. There was never a sense that he was overshadowing the Queen, and that in itself is a real achievement.
Yes, of course. I mean, he was always in the shadow of the Queen, but never not his own man. He did it with distinction his own way, and certainly buoyed by his own confidence. Most certainly, he was a team player, and that's again harking back to his lessons to the younger members of the family. Certainly, the conversations he was having with Prince Charles right until his very last days were about how Charles would take the monarchy forward, how it needed to be a team aspect of it. Of course, there is one top person at the very, very top, but they have to be supported by other members of the family. And that's what probably left him brokenhearted with the fact that Harry and Meghan decided to leave that family, to leave that unit. And certainly it will be very, very interesting to see how the next few days, weeks and months play out. And I don't think we'll really recognise the real true effect on the rest of the family for quite some time yet. They will be feeling his loss immeasurably, I'm sure.
We'll just pick up that point on Prince Harry, because he has landed at Heathrow. He's back in Britain. His wife hasn't come because of medical advice, because she's obviously in the late stages of pregnancy, Meghan. That's not a bad thing in itself, though, isn't it? Because if she was to come, of course, there would be a lot more potential that it would overshadow the Duke's funeral. How are people in Britain feeling about the return of Prince Harry?
Well, it's very split, I think, is the diplomatic way of putting it. And of course, it will be fraught with tension. The wounds are still very, very raw from the Oprah Winfrey interview that Harry and Meghan gave just a few weeks ago. I mean, it's probably a good thing that he's coming on his own to be part of his, be welcomed into the family. But the issue really is that people do need to put aside their differences for this. This is for the common good, for the greater good, to see a wonderful man off. No doubt the preparations have been completely changed. I mean, there's only 30 mourners allowed at the funeral. There's huge restrictions here still in the UK, allowing that funeral to go ahead. But Prince Harry will be walking shoulder to shoulder with his father and his brother. And I think that just the symbolism of that taking place will hopefully bring the family together. There's certainly a lot of hope within the family that the brothers, and indeed Harry and his father, can put aside their differences, and maybe this will bring in a new dawn for their relationship.
Well, let's hope it is what eventuates. These funerals are tough times for any family, let alone someone in the royal family in the public eye like they all are. Russell Myers, thank you very much for your time.